Welcome everybody, my name is Andrew Ultimus and I want to give a talk tonight about complex conflict. And we all know conflict is part of life, right? It doesn't matter where you go. You can go to the Himalayan caves, you can go to a monastery, which I've done, spent a lot of time in monasteries. And it doesn't seem to matter where you go, there's conflict wherever you end up. But the kind of conflict that I want to address tonight is something I would call complex conflict. This is where you're dealing with a person who is not able to hear you, who's not able to understand you, or has a viewpoint that's so radically different than yours that there's no compromise, there's no middle ground. So I want to present to you a concise plan of action to deal with that kind of complex conflict. So the number one thing you can do is to be present. So what does presence mean? We've all heard about mindfulness and meditation and being more present in our lives, but does it really make sense? What I'm talking about is the act of being totally out of your mind, in your body, in your heart, watching yourself and being able to observe your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions. So it's one of the most powerful things we can engage in as a human being, is to be present with somebody. That means we're not thinking about responses, we're not thinking about what we're going to do or what we're going to say, we're just really present with that person. And it really makes that other person feel safe, and also opens them up to be able to express whatever they need to express. So which brings us to our second point, is observation. This is a key component in complex conflict. So when you're observing somebody very carefully, you're able to see body language, you're able to see if what they're saying is congruent with their actions, if even what they're saying has anything to do with what is really the issue. Sometimes you can watch a person and you realize in very short order that what they're communicating and what talking about is radically different than what the issue is. So observation is the second point now, which brings us to the third point now, which is listening. We've all heard over and over and over again how important listening is. They say seek to understand rather than be understood. Now this is a hard concept to do, but it is so powerful. I assure you, this speech has been conducted from my own experience. I've had many complex conflicts in my life, and I've taken my research from my life and I've made it into a kind of a short speech here to help you on your journey. So when you really listen to understand somebody, you empty your mind and you just listen with all of your being to what they're saying to try to understand them. I think it's so important. And it gives you power because now you have ability to really hear this person and really understand them and understand where they're coming from. So this brings us to kind of a halfway point. Usually at some point during these conflicts, you're given an opportunity to speak back and speak and say a few things. And so my recommendations for this are, number one, to keep any kind of communication with this person who is in an escalated emotional state or is unable to hear you or listen, to keep it as short and concise as possible. And number two is to be able to speak it in such a way that it doesn't raise the conflict. So you don't raise your voice, you don't get excited, you speak calmly and gently to them. So you might be sitting there in your chair or watching this and saying, how do I do this? And I saved the best for last. I wanted to provide you the presence, observation, and listening skills first. And the reason why I did that was because it takes a lot of desire and motivation to want to engage in this kind of practice. So number one thing, I'll go through two techniques that I've been using that have really helped me. So the first technique, they're all based on grounding. The first technique was I counted from my head, 1 1,000, 2 1,000. I counted to the space of 10. And in this last complex conflict I had was, in that space of 10 seconds, I went through a range of emotions. Anger, frustration, desire to protect myself, defend myself. But also in that 10 seconds, I heard a voice saying, the last time you engaged in trying to defend yourself, this happened. Or you remember the last time you just talked to this person. And so I reminded myself that usually it doesn't really help to engage with that person at the level they're at. So I was able to calm myself down, and then I was able to apply the other skills, which was another one was just to be able to be present, and you can flex your body muscles without being any confrontational, breathing in and then releasing it so you relax. So it just lets you stay present in your body, which is really important because it helps you to be in your heart and then to also see what's going on in your mind. It helps you to be with that person. And then the other point is, after you've practiced these skills for a while, another thing that you could practice is that instead of waiting for a conflict to happen, practice these skills daily. So in a period of a week, we probably have 1,000 conversations. So in those conversations, you could be practicing, am I being present with this person? Am I holding space for them? Am I hearing them? Am I trying to understand what they're telling me? Am I being observing? Am I observing them closely? And if you practice these skills, by the time you actually get into a conflict, you're actually prepared. And another thing is, if you actually know you're going into a place where there could be conflict, it's up to you to prepare yourself mentally before you go into that conflict area so that you're ready to handle it. So in closing, I want to say this. I've tried these techniques. I've researched them in my own life. I've proven them to be true from my own experience. They work. And every time I've used these skills in the last year or so, I've had successful and peaceful outcomes on every single one I've used and tried. And I offer this last point to you is, if you don't believe me, try it. Go out there and the next time you have a conflict, try these skills and let me know if they've worked for you. So with that, I want to say thank you for listening to me, and I offer a big thank you, and I say good night to you all.